All right. Welcome everyone out there in social media to Warrior Women in Business podcast, episode number 60. My name is Jasmine Sandler. I am the founder and creator of Warrior Women in Business, an organization that has been supporting women in business, primarily female executives, female entrepreneurs, and women in the arts for 10 years. Helping them really with our mission is to help you grow, help you learn, and come together and support each other. And so this podcast is all about bringing together thought leaders in all different verticals. And Warrior Women in Business, for those of you that are new, Warrior Women in Business is an organization that has a podcast, special events in education and entertainment, an entire member organization of services and branding and marketing, and is a subset of my main company, JS Media, which has been helping businesses since 2006 move forward in digital marketing. All that being said, before I get into today's guest, which I'm very excited about, I am a big proponent, if any of you that know me, in utilizing the law and really understanding the law as an entrepreneur, a business person for your benefit instead of being afraid of it. So if any of you have watched my JSM for Artists series, I've had folks like people from the Copyright Association on talking about all the ways you can increase your monetary value by understanding and utilizing the law and legal representation in the correct way. So on today's episode number 60, I have Melissa Rueschhoff on, who is a partner at Holon Law, who actually I met through a conversation I had at the National Association of Music Manufacturers in California, where I was a speaker this year on artist branding. And long story short, I was really excited to bring Melissa on to talk about, really to provide advice and talk about her experience in supporting artists and entrepreneurs in the law. Just a couple of notes. The last couple of episodes have been fantastic. If you've missed them, episode 59, I had Robin Newman on, who's a leader on Broadway here in New York City. She's a producer, co-producer of major plays like Tommy, which actually just ended this week, and other plays. And she talked about, and was so generous with her time, actually, talked about how to make it on Broadway as a producer and how to get involved with different organizations. So I encourage you to check that out. I also encourage you to check out episode 58, where I had the president of the Women's Military Memorial in Arlington, Virginia, which provides awareness for the over 3 million women that have served in the U.S. military since the Revolutionary War. I think it was one of my favorite episodes, only because I've never, ever interviewed anyone in the military, and I had no idea the 3 million in the women have supported the U.S. government and the U.S. military. I was pretty much blown away. So because of that, we created a very special Warrior Women in Military t-shirt, which we're donating the proceeds of that t-shirt back to the memorial to help grow those stories. All of that you can see on the website. But let's get into today's episode. Today's episode, again, is really about getting expert advice on the law from a number of perspectives. So Melissa, if you want to say hello, and I'm going to give a little bit of
Hi, thank you for having me. Wow, I am amongst some amazing women that you've had on this podcast. Um, yes, so my husband is active duty military and kind of been in that space for about 20 years. So I cannot wait to hear episode 58. And I happened to see Tommy on Broadway when they were in London.
Oh,
Yes, I saw Tommy and Les Mis when I was studying over there. I studied for a semester at Oxford in England and decided it was, great opportunity to go to London and see plays on the weekends. And so that's the first time I ever saw Tommy. So I can't wait to see episode 59.
well,
Well,
here's what's interesting is I went to school in Banbury in London for
okay.
Shakespeare, and I studied the writing, and I got to see the Royal Shakespeare plays for an entire semester. And right,
Wow.
I mean, the quality of acting over there is just, it's top notch.
I agree. I even went to on a tour to Shakespeare's home,
Oh,
where he was,
wow. I didn't
yeah,
get to
which
do that. That must have
it
been
was
amazing.
fascinating. I know we digress, but I can't wait to watch your episodes
No,
50.
it's okay to digress on it's meant to be a conversation. Of course, we're going to provide some information, but this is how women connect. I mean, this is a perfect
Yeah,
example,
you're
and we
exactly.
also talked about on episode 58, in fact, was such a good episode. We talked about how leaders need to support each other and get to know each other. This is how we do it, because if we work as solo leaders, we can't really help. So this is a great, great example. So I'd like to give a little bit of a background on Melissa.
All right.
I wouldn't have asked you to be on if you weren't a superstar. So, so Melissa has been practicing law for over 25 years in 10 different jurisdictions, state, federal, criminal, and so on. I'm not a lawyer, so she'll share more about that. But in itself, I'm friends with lawyers, and I've never heard of any of them having so much breadth in their practice. So I'd love to hear how you got there. She's a partner at Holon Law again, and Holon Law specializes today really where they're focused, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is in entertainment, video game, and music, which there's so much to uncover in that world. Yes. There's so many changes that happen in that world, so many opportunities that creators don't understand. I'm really happy you're on. She also runs her own podcast, which I've watched, under the Holon Women's Initiative, which supports women in the law and other professions, I assume. And as she mentioned, she has a husband in the military, and she's going to talk about that a bit today. Her bio is very long. So I thought I'd do a quick summary and get right into the questions today. Of course, after the podcast, so everybody knows, of course, all of my guests are amazing and generosity with their time as much as they can. So she will provide her contact information, and you should all check out Holon Law, especially if you're in the creative space, I think. Okay, so I'm just going to jump right into the questions. So being a partner in a law firm and running a women's initiative, there's a lot to manage, right? So, for me, who runs multiple businesses, a lot of it is about drive. So I'm wondering with you, where does this drive come from? And then visualize for us a little about like you and how you got to doing all of these things and ending up here.
Oh, I love that question. Okay. Yes, to me, I call probably what you're calling drive, I call passion. And so, when I speak at women's conferences, I talk about how to know your purpose or your passion or your reason for being here on earth. And I always say it's either something that you are so inspired about, you cannot wait to get up in the morning and do it. And you would do it regardless of whether you called it a job or a career, ever got paid. Or it's something that is just so frustrating or angering to you that you say, somebody should fix that. And that somebody might just be you. And so for me, I think, my husband jokes with me because I don't want to say no to things I'm passionate about. And so I really do say yes to a lot of different things. And I think the way I manage that is I'm ultra uber organized. That's kind of how I am able to do it all.
Absolutely.
But then it's like I said, it's coming from a place here. And I think what has led to some of my successes as a lawyer is I will take some emotion I have toward a case, a subject matter, or a client, and I will instantly then transfer it over cerebrally so that I can best advocate from a legal, a strategic, a cerebral space and work on, that client's case. So early on in my career, I was a special victims prosecutor. And so oh my goodness, I tried special victims cases in Texas.
So can you explain that to the people that don't know what that means?
Absolutely. So special victim is going to be, typically it's child cases. So you have child neglect, child abuse, and that can be physical or sexual. You have adult rape cases, you have adult domestic violence cases, and then you have capital murder cases that involve any special victim, which can be somebody under the age of 6, over the age of 75. And this is just, each state law has very specific, or each state has very specific laws, but in general, very young, very old, 2 or more people, or somebody who is in service to our country through police, firefighter, or even military, where they're serving in a capacity to help others, and then they're killed in that line. So that was kind of what fueled me early on, is advocating on behalf of either the voiceless or those that had an inability to speak for themselves. And I think through the course of being married to military, you asked a great question, how have you managed to practice for more than 25 years in 10 jurisdictions? And that's truly from being married to military. So I grew up in Texas. My first licensure was in Texas. And then we get married in 2004 and moved to Korea. And I started doing consulting work with the JAG over there. and started teaching fitness classes. I mean, it was very much, and I think for women that are, I don't even say women, spouses, military spouses,
Military
you
spouses.
very much learn to take your passions and then adjust and adapt based on your circumstances. So I said, I want to be married. I know we're going to move all over the world. In fact, we just moved to Colorado 2 weeks ago.
Oh.
Right, that was
Yeah.
our 15th move together as a couple and
Wow.
family. But I don't want to change what I do because I'm passionate about it and I love it. And I keep coming back to that. And so that has kind of changed and evolved. And the neat thing is when I met the folks that I started Holon Law Partners with, so there are 8 of us. And I know you mentioned you met Max Haas at that event back
Yeah,
in
I met
January.
Max when I was speaking. Mhm.
Yes. And he was so
I was
impressed.
I was so glad he approached me, you know.
Well, he's amazing. So you talk about different
Yeah.
areas of the law. So Max is not only a musician himself, but he knows, so he knows the lingo, he understands, that industry, but then he's a great attorney in that entertainment space. So he was, that's really kind of a niche that he has. And
Yep.
then we have an attorney, Matt Ravella, who came on board after we founded. And his area is really more in the TV film industry.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Daphne, and Daphne is based out of Houston, Texas. She's one of our younger, newer attorneys, but she is very much plugged into the video game world and the anime world.
Yep.
And so those are really kind of, niche areas. And our firm, Holon, right now we have 15 attorneys and we have 15 different states of licensure. And not because we all only have one state of licensure, but because there are many of us that have the same state. And so you'll see, California and New York and Texas and Illinois and places like that. But we founded this firm and said, we want to bring what we love to do together to a firm. And we don't want it to be siloed. We want it to be truly collaborative and holistic.
Yes.
So bring what you love, bring where your passion is, and then how can we work together? So I work on cases with Max, I work on cases with Matt and with Daphne. And I don't know, I mean, I think one of the areas we just hired this phenomenal Harvard grad who has been all over and he's lived many lives, I should say, to lead our AI group. Because when you start talking about any area of law, especially the entertainment space, music, film, TV, you really need to also look at how is artificial intelligence going to be affecting that.
It already is.
Right.
I mean, we talk about that at JSM for Artists quite a bit, and that's why I like bringing this to the table, because you have to embrace it, and I love that you're embracing it in that way. You have to embrace it as a business.
Well, and it's a
So
daily.
that's fantastic, right? The AI piece.
Yeah.
So when did that start?
So we hired Cameron. Let's see, we actually launched, the 8 of us that founded Holon, founded it in July 2023. So exactly a year ago.
Wow, it's so young.
Yep. And I mean, we collectively, you had mentioned me being, more than 25 years of practicing. The 8 of us collectively have been practicing for more than 100 years. But we brought in other attorneys. Now there's 15. And AI, I want to say we brought in maybe in January.
Okay, yeah.
And, when you say you're already having these conversations, we are always reaching out to Cameron of how does it affect entertainment space? And we have an intellectual property group, that works a lot with the copyright and the trademark space. How does AI affect that? How do we make sure that our clients are secure and safe when using AI? Or if they're not, how can we best advise them? So yeah, it's fun because it's all about taking what do you love to do and how can you represent people and take those passions and take that advocacy for your clients and for your cases.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're very synonymous in that way. I think that's why Max approached me is, we support women and artists, and I'm an artist. And, I think these are underserved people that need expertise and guidance so that they can grow. So I'm very excited, and I'm sure anybody that listens will check out the website and see these different areas. Okay, so let's talk about one of the reasons I really wanted you to be on is to talk about how law supports business I know this, but from the inception, right? Well, okay, I'm going to start a company. I'm going to get some investors, or maybe I'm going to bootstrap this. So from that, to all the way to creative endeavors, so I have an art project. I have an album, multiple albums. So how does it support it? What are some of the things that both creatives, I mean, it could be a filmmaker, an artist, a musician or a female entrepreneur, how should they start to look at legal representation? What are some of the like must-haves?
Yes. We look at it like we're partnering with our clients. We don't look at it like we're the lawyer for or the legal representation for the client. We are, of course, but we prefer to work with clients where we are, you talk about babies and toddlers and children and all that. We prefer when they're in that baby toddler stage. So they have an idea, they have a vision, they have something they want to turn into a reality, but they don't know how to get there. And one of my favorite things is to sit down, and I call it strategic planning, but that's kind of a fancy word of just saying, tell me your vision. And then let's talk through, what does that look like? Do we need to establish a business so we can do an S corp or an LLC or an LLP?
Right.
What's going to be the best one for you? Okay. From there, is there anything through your ideas or your work product or something you've designed that we need to be looking at intellectual property? We need to secure it and make sure it's safe so nobody else can do what you've done. Then we look at, all right, when you're actually up and running, is there anything we need to do in your state to advocate? Because I love lobbying and I love legislation. I worked in the Hawaii state legislature, and I've done lobbying in Arizona and Hawaii. And do we need to take something that you see in the law that maybe is hindering you or preventing you from seeing your vision come to fruition that may be archaic, and we just need to address that? So then we need to change the laws.
That's very
one
important.
of the things. Yeah. So let's look at drafting new legislation and going in and lobbying for it to be changed so that it's for the best for you and the folks in your industry. And then of course, litigation. I mean, having been a trial attorney and a prosecutor, and then I did civil law as well. I love that about 90% of my clients right now are women entrepreneurs. And if we go to trial, I'm going to be the one trying the case, and we'll be partnering together. I'll bring in, when I talk about collaborating, I'll bring in other attorneys at the firm who are brilliant and have all these different areas of expertise. But that to me is what it looks like to represent folks in this space. It's just coming alongside and partnering with them. And that's kind of the model we've created.
So when someone is starting a project, we do business coaching, do a lot of artists, right? So, at what point? So they're starting a project, let's say, I actually know a lot of filmmakers right now. So let's say they're, and all of them are raising money. So they're raising money to get this project off the ground. Do they seek legal advice during that? At what stage? I'm just talking about the startups of new projects.
Right. Absolutely. So most of my clients, when they retain me, I provide general counsel work for them. So yes, from the very beginning. And it might not be that they really need much from me at the very beginning, but again, with the partnership piece of it, I like to know what's happening. And then when they do need me, I've seen the whole project from the beginning, and I can say, I can step in and ask questions they may not be thinking about, because as a lawyer, you're trained to think differently, or they may have questions that I can answer. But I love being there from the beginning, because then I have a full picture. And it may not even mean that they need legal representation at that point. They just need, in my opinion, from the very beginning, if you have a lawyer on board that you trust, that you can reach out to, even with just simple questions, that's the way to go. And for all my clients that just come on board, if they're just calling to ask questions here and there, it's pretty simple. I mean, we can delve into big projects together, but I like to be a part of all of that to whatever extent they need me.
Yeah, I understand. It's very consultative, and I think that's the key to their success, to have the right team around them, especially if they're a solo person or they just don't have that background, right?
Right. 100%. Yep. Because you don't know what you don't know.
I see it in my own practice. I think it's so important.
I agree.
It makes a lot. Yes,
I always say that I try to put my time, energy, and effort into things that I know really well, and then I hire people that are experts for the things I don't.
Absolutely. So is there anything you can talk about? Because that's my first question. And are there any specific projects that you guys are working on that you're really excited about that you could share?
Yeah. Gosh, in the entertainment space.
Yes, in the entertainment would be wonderful.
Right. So I would love, in fact, I was thinking about this as we were going on, I would love to have Max and Daphne on here as well, because that is really their area, and they do so many amazing things with so many amazing artists. And, to me, this video game, anime, very much a new and evolving law, whereas Max working with musicians, I mean, that's his, as old as time,
It
but
is.
they are always working on unique projects. And the neat thing is Daphne's part of my Holon Women's Initiative
Mm.
group. And so she'll share different, and it's always state of the art. It's always something that so definitely look up what she's doing, because she's very good, and they're both very good about sharing on Instagram, sharing on Twitter, and then of course,
Yeah, no, I saw it all on LinkedIn. I'm always
yeah,
applauding Max. So I
yes,
get the other two, but we do at Warrior Women, we constantly host events. Actually, we just hosted, which is why I think I'm still tired from 3 weeks ago. I'm telling you. We hosted a Warrior Women event with the New York City Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment. We hosted a female battle of bands where everyone won. It was awesome.
I love it.
Yeah. So, anyways, the point is we're always hosting events and looking into putting together, planning a next educational event. So perhaps we can bring them on the panel.
That would be
That
great.
would make sense for artists that want to know more. Okay,
Yes.
so let's keep going a little bit. You've talked about the Women's Initiative a few times at
Yes.
Holon. Can you kind of share a little bit more? What does that look like? What do you do? What's the purpose?
Right. So it's called Holon Women's Initiative, and it really has three separate purposes. So one, on a very organic and base level, it's the six of us that are women attorneys at Holon. We come together every month and we ask, how are you doing? We're checking in with each other. How can I support you from a personal level to a professional level, cases they may be working on, boards they may serve on. I personally cap my board membership at 3. I only will serve on 3 boards at a time. So I can really,
understand that.
right, it's invested.
Believe me, I get it.
And sometimes it's even those questions. Well, should I consider this one? All right. Because I also say when I'm speaking, when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And that no can simply be downtime or going for
Wonderful
a walk, going to
advice.
yoga, right?
Yes.
So we have a lot of those just supporting each other kind of at that base level. And we're going to be going to a conference later this year in Austin, Texas for women in business, which is going to be amazing. And then we have the second component where, but every quarter we will host where we come together with, it can be our colleagues, our clients, our friends, women entrepreneurs. And we usually will either ask a question. For example, I've lived overseas more than half of my time married to my military husband. And so the question I asked at our very first International Women's Day event, I said, what have you learned from women internationally that makes you see how really we are a lot alike, how tied together we are, and how much we have in common? And I mean, I learned that firsthand just living in Qatar. We lived in the Middle East, and I taught fitness classes and I did consulting work in the legal space there. And all of my clients were from other countries. And I learned how much we all have in common. We think we're so different because of our geographic region,
Right,
or maybe
that is true.
Oh, we're so similar. So that we kind of do the quarterly, and then we had Daphne. She's like I said, the one that's really focused on the video games and anime, and she does intellectual property as well. And she came on to talk about Juneteenth. What does it mean? Where did it come from? So that's the second one that we've hosted. So we have the supporting each other. We have the quarterly where we're outward facing and focusing on everyone in our network. And then we have the Holon Women's Initiative Leadership Podcast Series. And so I think you mentioned lawyers. I've actually never had a lawyer on. I take women in different industries, which is why I would love to have you come on. And I ask them 4 main questions. And they're all centered around, how do you empower other women? How do women empower other women?
Fantastic.
What can we do? Yeah. Because I mean, every study
important.
from Forbes to Harvard Medical Journal, Harvard, I mean, every study has said we are stronger when we're together. And it's not about women are good and men are bad, because amazing men in all of our lives are super supportive of us. Right. It's about, how do we as leaders lift each other up, encourage each other, support each other, bring out the best in each other, and then advocate for each other. So I've had folks in the financial industry, in the fitness industry. I've had a woman in the military. I've had somebody in the coaching space. Gosh, I'm trying to think of all of them. The one I have in August is actually the first African-American female to orbit Earth on SpaceX. And so I know, right? I meet her we were at Luke Air Force Base. My husband was the commander there, and I meet her at our air show. And the first thing she says is, do you want to see my favorite selfie from space? I was like, words nobody's ever said, right? So amazing. I'm having her on in August. And so I learn as much from them as my listeners learn from them. And it's just So that's kind of the three components. And the podcast series, I'm starting to branch a bit in the sense that I would love to have some of the other women from Holon Women's Initiative kind of tag team where we both ask
Yeah.
questions. So that's kind of something we'll see in the future. But that's what the Holon Women's Initiative looks like.
Well, I'm so glad you're doing it, you know.
Thank you.
It's these are efforts that are so important. And I was on speaking of England, one of my podcast guests runs this company called Net Women in London. I think it's in London or near London. So I asked her to be on my podcast. She has a fantastic women's organization there, helping women in tech primarily, and my background's in tech. And so she asked me to be on, and then I said, well, you should be on my podcast. And now we were talking about doing a women's event together. Like go to London and then come to New York. And I think it's just so important. I love what you said about women are the same, how much we actually have in common. And it really is about, I mean, that's why I started Warrior Women Business in the very first place, was I didn't want to see competition between women. That's the reason that is a very simple reason.
Yes.
And so I think this collaboration, cooperation, whatever words you want to use is truly important. That leads me to my next question, which is female mentors. Have you personally, do you have a female mentor? Have you had female mentors, and how have they helped you?
Yes. So early on in my career, there were three women who were prosecutors in special victims units that I really admired. I admired their passion, their ethics, their tenacity in working on their cases, but making sure that they not only believed in the cases they were prosecuting, but that they had the evidence to go forward. I loved the way they interacted with the victims and the witnesses. And I took those traits and those qualities and incorporated them into me. You know, I've always said, you don't want to be just like someone else, because you can't. You're unique and
Absolutely.
You should be. But I learned so much from them early on. And you know, it's funny. Somebody else recently asked me about that. I don't have a mentor per se, but I can tell you there are women in my life right now who are 90 years old, 75 years old, 35 and 25 years old that I look up to for all different reasons, because they give me a different perspective. And if there's one thing I've learned in, you know, the aging process, it's that there's so much you can learn from other people, from their backgrounds, their experiences, their views on life. It's not as cut and dry as I think back when I was younger, I thought it was, and right and wrong and just easily identified. It's so much more of a understanding and a coming alongside and learning from each other. And so the mentors that I have are ones that are women that I have looked up to, that just offer me, maybe they challenge me a little bit, or maybe they offer me a different perspective that I wouldn't have thought of, but do so with grace. And I think that's the big piece, right? It's very much this is what I think, but it's, you know, it's done out of love and out of grace. And those are the people I think I learn the most from and that I connect with the most. So yeah, it's so fascinating. It's not an age thing for me. It's so much more of a, I don't know. I think it's number one, you respect them, and then you want to learn from them. And then you realize that you make each other better people by being around each other and bouncing ideas. And so those are the mentors that I have really gravitated toward, and their voices will resonate or will ring as I'm making decisions. Because they've
isn't that wonderful when I hear a line. In fact, I had an amazing meeting today. With a woman who I just recently met, and she's amazing. And we were talking about this today a little bit. And because I always think of, you know, back when I was at IBM and a director, it's like, what's my list of books I'm going to read this quarter for business to become a leader? And I don't really do that anymore. And I said to her today, you know, I learned from other women that I know, people that I look up to. And I think it's you're exactly right. It's different ages, and it's about listening. So
yes, 100%.
But yeah, I mean, I love that you talked about it, and that's, again, it's about being out there. You know, you have to actually connect with the people. So
yeah.
Okay, I'm going to keep going. So let's get into some specifics. So any specifics you can share for creators pertaining to intellectual property, which I'm always yelling at artists about always, because I'm an artist myself. And the first thing I do is look at the law with everything that I do.
That's smart. That's smart. Yes.
I mean, I have to know the law. So what are some tips, some resources, some organizations, whether they're a musician like me or a true visual artist or a filmmaker, what are some things to both protect their works as well as help to add value you think you might want to share?
Yes. I think my answer is not just indigenous to the art community. I think it's also for any entrepreneur.
Good.
And gosh, I mean, it's kind of threefold. The first I would say is don't get a form online and fill it out and submit it. You're not protecting yourself. Rely upon experts that know what they're doing in the intellectual property space, in the entertainment space, in the AI space, in the legal space. I would never go get a medical document and fill it out and profess to diagnose myself. I would not expect, right?
What an excellent analogy that is.
I mean, really, I rely very heavily on people that know way more than me in those areas.
Me too.
So in order to, people will say, but it's easier, it's faster, it's cheaper, but it's not in the long run. If there ends up being something wrong with the intellectual property filing, or if litigation ensues. And so I would say lean on those experts in the industry. And as a lawyer, of course, lawyers are one of those experts. Bring them on board early enough. There are many different fee arrangements that can be had, whether it's a flat fee or an hourly fee that can, I know for sure the folks at Holon work with folks, come alongside the clients and say, what do you need? How can I help? And how can we make this cost effective? And so don't anticipate or expect that it's going to be too expensive for you to trust that expert, an attorney first, and just let them come alongside you to answer your questions and to give you the legal advice that you need. So that would come to be the first one. And then piggybacking on that, it's incumbent upon us to be knowledgeable about our state's laws, about the federal laws, if it's a federal issue, about intellectual property laws, brand new. And we talked about it's ever changing and evolving, the artificial intelligence world. So that's where we will stay current and be able to advise, as opposed to getting online. And as you know, there's so much misinformation and disinformation online. So trust people that that have the degree, and not just lawyers. This is all experts.
I agree with you.
They know what they're doing. So that would probably be my biggest tip, is engage early on with someone that has that area of expertise and let them partner with you the whole way.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And one thing I'll add is I don't even know how, I don't keep track anymore with the SBA. I used to, with the number of new businesses every year. Because I used to be a speaker at the Small Business Expo. And, but there's millions and millions of small businesses. There's millions and millions of artists with new projects. And I have seen in my own business, the entrepreneurs and the artists that invest in themselves by bringing on experts are the ones that succeed in the end.
Right.
So the cheap and free, you can't sustain. And so I love that you talk about, because it is really true. And I also like your approach in terms of talking to people and letting them know that it can be cost effective, because I know a lot of people say, well, I could never afford a lawyer or representation, but they don't know what they don't know. Right.
Right. And how expensive it can be if you don't do it the right way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So we talked a little bit about Holon Law. We talked about the Women's Initiative. You talked about your background a little bit. So Max reached out to me, and then he said, oh, I'd love to talk to you about what we do. And because I also have JSM for Artists. And then I said, well, I have this Warrior Women in Business podcast. Is there anyone in your firm that might want to be on? So he immediately said you. And so I reached out. And when I reached out, I always ask my guests, when you heard the term Warrior Women in Business, what came to mind? What do you think of the term?
Gosh, I feel like it's everything we've been talking about through the Women's Initiative. So what I call Women's Initiative, you're calling Warrior Women in Business. And it's simply women that are rallying what they believe in, what they're passionate about, and what they want to put out in the world. They're rallying that with the people in their lives that can help make that a reality, whether it be experts or people in the business sector, or just your colleagues and your inner circle. But coming together, because if you think about when I think about warriors, they are both independent and interdependent, right? I mean, it's the same thing. How, if you look up the term, interestingly, Holon is exactly about that. So it was
Oh,
fascinating.
really? That's interesting.
Yes, it's about how we exist both as independent people and part of our community, the larger world, I mean, everything. But warrior is the same thing. You are a warrior when you go on that battlefield. You are fighting for you're fighting on your own, but you're fighting for everybody that's behind you, aside you, and in front of you. You're fighting for
Absolutely.
everything that you believe in. And so when I think about warrior, and then I think about warrior women, I just picture these women alongside one another on the battlefield, whatever your battlefield is, um, lifting each other up, pulling each other up sometimes, walking alongside, whatever it is that they need, but being warriors together in that industry. And so I love that phrase. You said you've been doing it for 10 years.
Yeah, just this. And it just came off of me speaking. I didn't bring that up in the beginning, but I was speaking at a conference and I had another podcast that I was running and it was doing really well. It was called the Truths of CEOs, and I would interview CEOs cross industry to share the truths of what it's like to work in that industry for the mission of helping people develop careers. I'm all about career development. So anyways, I was speaking at this conference and I saw, and all these women were so gravitated towards me. This is not intentional. It's like
Right.
someone gave this to me to do in life. So I just said, I have to do something, in this podcast just real honestly, like organically developed.
You
And
know,
it's
Jasmine, I love hearing. I just got chills when you said that. So I was speaking last August, almost a year ago, at a women's conference. It was for the Chamber of Commerce. They invited me to speak, and I
nice.
said, "What do you want me to talk about? Do you want me to talk about being an entrepreneur, being an attorney, being a military spouse, being a working mother? I mean, there's many different roles and hats, that we wear."
Yeah, we
And
didn't even talk about the working mother.
right, I mean,
That's
you're
a
like,
whole that's a whole subject. Yeah.
and they said, "No, we just want you to tell your story." And I
Mm.
said, "No one's ever asked me to just tell my story." And I went, okay. So I did zero prep. I mean, I don't usually anyway. I figure it's just going to be a dialogue. But
Yeah,
if I'm
right.
speaking at something, I need to have some prep. And I just started from the beginning and I walked through where I grew up and my experience and my education. And then, kind of went from there. And we were at the 45-minute mark and it was time to be done. And it was all women who run their own business or they are in the business school or both.
Mhm.
And, they stood up and said, okay, it's our time. And everyone said, will you keep going if we can call our CFOs or our COOs to run everything for us? Will you keep going with your story? And I
Wow.
said, sure. I had another meeting in an hour and a half, but I had the bandwidth to do it. And I left there and I was so energized because it wasn't just talking, it became interactive.
Yeah.
And then afterward, they came up and we exchanged phone numbers. And to this day, through just that one experience, there are 10 women entrepreneurs that I am friends with, or they're clients, or both.
Wow.
And it was just understanding each other. And then I've gone to their workplace and they've helped me learn about art and about oh my gosh, the coffee business. I mean, just very unique things one of them is the vice president of a bank. And just created these and developed these lifelong friendships. From there, it was Eric Postow, who's one of our managing partners, that
Mhm.
said, have you ever thought about doing a podcast? And so exactly what happened to you is what happened to me, because that was not in my plan for starting Holon with these other 7
Yeah.
amazing individuals.
Mhm.
It very organically happened. And it's really fun and inspiring to talk with other women like you. And we'll hang up and I'll want to know more. And then I'll say, when are we going to see each other
I know.
next?
I told you I'm going to come to Colorado. I'm not kidding.
Good.
Because one of
Max
my
is
former
here.
clients, who's also amazing person that you should meet, she's out there, and we've been saying, since she was a client of mine, we just connected, and I said, I need. And she moves like you, so I said I'm going to come to Colorado. So now,
Good.
and it's
And
not a bad
Max is
place
an
to
hour
visit.
away.
I mean, it's the most beautiful place. So.
It is.
Yeah, and I think the organic development of things as a
Mhm.
business owner, and like you started this podcast, you talked about passion. And I think that's where we get the most energized. And if we have people around us we can learn from, you can really skyrocket and bounce things. I love that you talked about bouncing ideas, information, decisions off of. That's where the experts come in. That's where the leadership comes in. So
Yes.
I really am glad that you shared all of
Well,
that.
and being humble enough to listen, because there's so many Less so now because I just choose not to surround myself with them.
Good for
But
you.
they're, I have met some in my life that they know everything and they're not willing to be humble enough
Ugh,
to consider that somebody else might have a better
oh
idea or
my
a better
God,
way of
no.
doing something, right? Yeah.
That makes me
That
cringe.
humility matters. Yeah.
That makes me cringe. Okay, so is there anything coming up, any events or ways to get in touch with you that people should know about that you'd like to share? Of course, all of this will go in the show notes with the edited episode, but anything you want to share in terms of contact info or events, go right ahead, please.
Yes, I would say getting onto whatever social media platform you use. And if it's just the website, Holon Law Partners, if it's LinkedIn, we have a Holon Women's Initiative page. So we have a Holon Law Partners and a Holon Women's Initiative page. I have my own. Would love to connect with your folks. It can be on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. I mean, we have a presence in a lot of different forms. And we even put the Holon Women's Initiative podcast on YouTube as well.
Yep.
So whatever's easiest for people, that's where we put any upcoming events that we have. We do have some pretty amazing events coming up in the intellectual property space, the AI space, the entertainment space, and the cannabis space.
Oh boy.
So, I mean, and you can get onto any of those and you'll be able to see what we have kind of, or reach out to me individually. And people can email me at Rueschhoff@holonlaw.com, reach out to me on LinkedIn individually, or they can call me. They can call me on my work phone, no problem at all. Would love to connect. I think for me, once you get a chance to make that initial connection, then it's about what you and I did, just sitting and learning and realizing that we can learn so much from each other and we have such amazing ways to collaborate going forward.
Yeah, in a long-term way. That's what
Yeah.
I think. It's not just a one and done.
Right.
Okay, so we are going to put all of that in the show notes. Certainly the events that you have coming up. I
Yes.
think the audience should definitely take advantage of it. And I'd love to post podcast, maybe plan something with you as Warrior Woman branches out now, finally, I think post-COVID. I'm always afraid to say that COVID is over. But planning events in person is just the best for connections. So perhaps we could plan something. I've been thinking about doing that. We did that, I don't know, pre-COVID. I did a whole thing with JSM for Artists with another law firm and the Copyright Alliance, and we did branding, and it was specifically for music, but it was brand protection, and it was very well attended. Because you got to continue, whether you're an artist or an entrepreneur, as you mentioned, you continually need to stay up to date with the law, what's happening. You mentioned AI with branding. And so please reach out to Melissa, and she's so generous to share all of her contact info because we all know how busy she is. So yes, so thank you so much. We will be editing this and sharing that and sharing all of the resources that you provided, and anything that we have upcoming jointly, we'll also share. And hopefully I can be on your podcast because
Yes.
I watched it. Everybody should take a look at it. I loved it. It's very, very good.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, of course, it's a very easy discussion. I knew that you would add a lot of value. And that's what we're here for, right? To help other women.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is episode 60. We have at Warrior Women in Business. We've been very busy, especially on the event side. So just a little bit of peek of what we're getting into for those of you that are interested. New York City, we're constantly planning events. Our events, as I mentioned in a meeting today, are meant to be interesting and not boring. So we have events in the educational space, which are very action oriented. If you're a women's organization and you're looking to partner with us, please reach out to us at info@warriorwomeninbusiness.com. We also have, it looks like we're going to have more concerts coming up because the concert was very well attended, and there were a lot of female musicians that are really interested in what we're doing, both in New York City and in Los Angeles and Beverly Hills, where I'm involved with other organizations. So look out for our events. We have some amazing guests coming up at Warrior Women in Business. 3 of which today I confirmed, but we're not announcing them yet. So you need to look out for that. Get on our email list, check out what we have going on. If you need any help with branding your business or marketing your business, this is what we do in our sleep. Reach out to us. Definitely take advantage of what Melissa shared today. Branding, marketing, and the law, when it comes to, especially to new projects and entrepreneurial ventures, work hand in hand. We really don't work without each other. A lot of times, Melissa, my clients will ask me questions. I might know the answer, but I always say that's a legal question. You need representation. And I think it's a marriage that's, if you want to grow a business or a creative project, you need both hands, right?
Yeah.
Working tandemly. So I will leave it at that. I want to thank Melissa again for being on today. Warrior Women in Business podcast, episode 60. Look out for this edited podcast on all Warrior Women in Business channels. Please reach out to us if you're interested in being a guest, partnering with us, getting involved with our amazing events. I love them. Or just any questions about what we're doing. And again, the Warrior Women in Military Tee is available now in our shop, in all our shops. And we are helping to raise money for the Women's Military Memorial in Arlington, Virginia. We're planning a field trip there as well, and we'll be announcing that. So with all that being said, Jasmine Sandler, the host of Warrior Women in Business. Thank you again, Melissa.
Thank you.
And we are signing off from episode 60. Have a good evening.